Welcome to the Sleep is a Skill podcast. My name is Molly McLaughlin, and I own a company that optimizes sleep through technology, accountability, and behavioral change. Each week, I'll be interviewing world-class experts ranging from doctors, innovators, and thought leaders to give actionable tips and strategies that you can implement to become a more skillful sleeper. Let's jump into your dose of practical sleep training. Welcome to the Sleep is a Skill podcast. The topic of today's podcast is essential oils, and it's actually a topic that I had been hesitant to bring to the podcast in any in-depth way because I didn't want it to be just a old, tired, oh yeah, we know lavender, yada, yada. And yet at the same time, I was happy to be connected with my guest today, Jodi Cohen, because of her really laundry list of accomplishments as it relates to her in-depth knowledge around essential oils, but also combinations of essential oils, the why behind them, really getting into the nitty-gritty in a way that a lot of people have not quite been able to do. So having said that, I'm going to read her bio to you so that you get a little sense of what she's been up to in this realm and why she's going to make a fantastic guest to go deeper on this topic and see why essential oils could be a really important set of tools in your toolkit. So Jodi Cohen is a best-selling author, award-winning journalist, functional practitioner, and founder of Vibrant Blue Oils, where she has combined her training in nutritional therapy and aromatherapy to create unique proprietary blends of organic and wild-crafted essential oils. She has helped over 70,000 clients heal from brain-related challenges, including anxiety, insomnia, and autoimmunity. Her website, vibrantblueoils.com, is visited by over 500,000 natural health seekers every year, and she has rapidly become a top resource for essential oil education on the internet today. Her first book, Healing with Essential Oils, is available on Amazon.com. Her new book, Essential Oils to Boost the Brain and Heal the Body, will be released in March or at the end of March 2021. Now let's dive into this podcast. Now, before we get into the podcast, I do want to take a quick minute to give a shout out to our sponsor, BetterHelp, or as I like to call it, a therapist in your pocket. It's the exact app that I used when I was going through my really challenging period of insomnia while traveling overseas. And the ability to maintain a consistent therapist in real life was just really not an option for me since we were jumping around from country to country. So the ability to, with using my phone, have video calls weekly with my therapist, I was paired with I connected with a great therapist right off the bat, but I do know other people who have been able to kind of shop around with some of the therapists on that app until they find a great fit for them. And in between those calls, one of the things that I found was really helpful is that you can also send voice notes, text messages, images in between that, longer weekly video call so that you do have this really very real ongoing connection and support that I certainly, at least in my experience, hadn't felt with real life therapists that I had used in the past. And also the pricing structure is much more competitive than a lot of the real life therapists that you can come into contact with. So I found it to be a lot of benefits. I recommend it to a lot of people that are just kind of going through struggles in their life or just simply want to be able to up level and bring in that level of reflection and awareness into their life about what's both working and not working. And you can certainly cancel at any time. And for our sleepy community, the BetterHelp company has hooked us up with 10% off if you go to betterhelp.com/sleep-is-a-skill. Again, betterhelp.com/sleep-is-a-skill. And welcome to the Sleep is a Skill podcast. My guest today is Jodi Cohen. And Jodi, I'm really excited to speak with you more and hear more about your story. We had an opportunity to kind of chat a little beforehand and had so many mutual kind of friends and acquaintances and all of these things. So I can't wait to, one, learn more about you, and two, to hear all that you've accomplished and what that can bring to our Sleep is a Skill audience.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I think like you, I'm kind of a necessity is the mother of invention,
Yes, 100%. I feel like often the most driven people in certain areas, it came because they needed to do it. and it needed to happen. So that's a perfect place to begin. So I'd love to hear a bit more about your kind of background and what was your necessity? What had you dive deeper and to create all that you've created?
Yeah, I think sometimes our healing journeys are a little bit like roller coasters. You hit rock bottom, you climb your way out, then you have another rock bottom, and you just keep building on what you learn. So my rock bottom kind of came, my former husband was bipolar, and it became pretty clear that he was going to die on my watch. And so my friends had an intervention, and we moved him to a residential treatment facility. And once I knew that he was safe and it wasn't my job to keep him alive, I ran out of steam immediately. I had been so stressed for so long and had just been burning through deficit spending with my cortisol, basically. And so I had been practicing nutrition. I knew what herbal supplements and remedies I was supposed to take, ingesting all of them. Nothing was working. My kids were 5 and 7 at the time. I would wake up with them, make them breakfast, pack their lunch, take them to school, come home, climb into bed, and set the alarm for pickup. And it just kind of continued like that. But fortunately, I was, prior to my collapse, I was kind of an overachiever, Uber volunteer, and I had helped a friend put together an event. So as a thank you, she came over with a huge box of essential oils and said, you've been so high stress for so long, and we know that cortisol kind of turns on chronic inflammation. I bet your gut is so inflamed that nothing you're ingesting is getting into your system. Oils are really cool because they can work through the skin. I bet that will help. And that was, kind of that first glimmer of hope, like, oh, that makes sense to me. Let's see if I can make this work. So I had a technique of assessment that I used in my practice. I worked a lot with squirmy kids. So it's this technique called muscle testing. It's a very efficient way to identify if something's going to help or not. And I used that technique to find 5 oils, which confused me because normally I would find 1 or 2 remedies. And then it occurred to me, oh, they're liquid. I can combine them. So I tested each individual oil, made my first blend, put it on my low back over my adrenals, and felt like myself for the first time in weeks. I thought, oh my God, I can go running. I can clean the house. I can do all of these things. And that night, I also suffered from insomnia. It's not uncommon to have your energy, stress and insomnia go hand in hand. So I would put the kids to bed and then begin what I called the clock watching adventure, 10 o'clock, 10:12, 10:24.
What a wonderful adventure. Yeah.
Praying for sleep as it just keeps, please let me fall asleep. Yeah. Yeah. So basically around somewhere between 10 and 10:30, it occurred to me, like, I wonder, I know this is melatonin. I know it's released by the, pineal gland. And I know that there are certain places on the head where the skin is really thin. Like, I wonder if I can make something for this. And it was just enough of a why not? It can't hurt to try. I went back down, formulated another blend, literally carried it up to my bedroom in a shot glass. And knowing that, your pineal gland, which releases the sleep hormone melatonin, is pretty much right in the middle of your brain. I kind of put it around, like above the ears, on the skin, back of the head, top of the head. I think I got the best sleep I had had since my son was born. I was like, okay, that was a win.
Wow.
So I just kept making things up. And then when I started to feel better, my friends were like, oh, can we try it? And I was really surprised. It seemed to work for everyone. And then one friend is like, you have to do something with this. And I thought, well, I'm sure, it's so obvious someone must be doing this. So I finally had kind of the mental capacity to go online and research. And I was super surprised by 2 things. The first was no one was really looking at essential oil blends through the lens of physiology to kind of balance organ systems and regions of the brain. And the way it was explained felt so incredibly complicated. I was almost grateful that I didn't start with research because I would have felt completely unqualified and never even tried it. So that's how I started the company. And it's exciting to talk to you about sleep because I really do think for sleep, oils can play such a powerful role and help in ways that other remedies, really struggle to support.
Wow. Well, number 1, I just appreciate you sharing that story. Number 2, I acknowledge you for taking the steps to not only, make a difference for your own health, based on what you found and kind of tinkering and playing with things and having that experience for yourself. But then also what you've created is just phenomenal, and sharing it with the world so that we can all kind of learn more and benefit. So, and I am excited because I would love to hear more too around one, your thoughts, certainly obviously on targeted on oils and sleep, but two, kind of more too around is your site and your books and all that you're putting out there does seem to fall outside of some of the traditional, oil quote unquote groupings. And, I've been really hesitant to have a lot of kind of the oil talk because I didn't want, to go into this sense of like, oh, okay, we're selling stuff and we're da 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 da. So I've been really kind of tiptoeing it. And yet what I was excited about with your approach is that, to your point, it really does seem to be in a category of its own. So what I'd love to do, is get a little bit deeper on what you alluded to of how there's kind of more the approach that you took and how that really stands out from the crowd.
Yeah, I think oils have been marginalized, which is unfortunate because they really are, first of all, they're derived from plants. And most people don't realize that over 50% of the pharmaceutical drugs that have come out in the last 30 years are modeled on plants. Aspirin is white willow bark.
Exactly.
Valium is valerian root. We are basically, the drugs that we think are science are really plants that have been slightly modified.
Sure.
And oils are the concentrated essence of plants. And they're basically, the medicine that, all of these food is medicine diets, they're right. And it's the constituents of certain plants that are really medicinal. So the other thing that people don't realize is, there's kind of this epidemic of brain-related issues, including insomnia, anxiety, depression. And one of the challenges is it's incredibly hard to get remedies into the brain. Like you can't do chemo in the brain because the molecules are too big.
Right.
So what people don't realize, the security system in the brain is called the blood-brain barrier. And it really only lets super small fat-soluble molecules through. Like for all the nutrition listeners, essential fatty acids, the reason they're so good at anti-inflaming the brain is they can actually get into the brain. So oils are super small fat-soluble molecules. They can get into the brain. And it's like the ambulance that's stuck in traffic. It's not going to save anyone's life. You actually have to get into the area that's damaged in order to unravel and heal.
I haven't heard it described as the security system for the brain before, but that is so well said. That is just a perfect kind of way to describe that around the blood-brain barrier. And then just this unique kind of a way for oils to defy that or to get through that in ways that others might not be able to. So that is so well said. And then in the domain, so one of the things I really like about your website is that you also sort by root cause. You have a number of different kind of categorization methods, but one of them is to look at some of these oils and combinations of the oils by your root cause. And one of them is sleep specific and stress and adrenal support. And certainly those two seem to really go hand in hand with a lot of us that are struggling with our sleep, among other things, for sure. I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about why that would make sense to take a look at those. What are some of the things that could support those areas?
Yeah, and that's actually the impetus for my book. I really talk about kind of the 5 underlying things that I think can be easily kind of put into balance with most people that suffer from a variety of conditions, including sleep and high anxiety and stress. And what's interesting is that oils are really uniquely positioned. Like I'm not that person who says there's an oil for everything. If you are having a heart attack, go to the hospital.
Right.
I think that if, it's kind of a preventative issue, oils are really good. And the most underlying issue that we see is kind of that the body is stuck in that chronic stress response, which impacts sleep, or it's not able to get the garbage out of the system. And so the garbage recirculates and it kind of triggers the immune response and the chronic inflammatory response, which then contributes to stress. So oils can do a lot of things. And I give very specific ways, like kind of clinically proven, research-backed ways to use them. One example is the biggest underlying problem for everything is that our body's operating system, our autonomic nervous system, which controls our automatic functions, heart rate, breathing, digestion, detoxification. It's designed to keep us alive. It has 2 gears. Think of the bike, right? You're going to be in a different gear going downhill than uphill. When you think there's danger, not just a lion chasing you down a street, which I've never seen happen, but, anticipatory stress. You're worried about your relationship, your finances, your children, your health, your family. All of those things kind of make your body feel like there's danger. And when there's danger, resources are allocated differently, right? They're allocated to prioritize survival. So that means all of you releasing kind of the stress hormone cortisol so that you have the energy to focus and fight or flee. It's called the sympathetic branch of your nervous system. Blood is routed away from digestion to your arms and your legs. Your breathing accelerates, your heart pumps faster so that more energy can kind of flow through your body. And everything kind of not critical to that survival turns off. But when you're in this stress state, you are pumping out, you're mainlining all of those stress hormones, like cortisol, that really throws off your sleep. So here is the problem. Most people live in that highly adrenalized stress state most of the time, and they don't know how to downshift into the parasympathetic state. And this is problematic. People say like, oh, you just need to relax. And you're like, really? But my job still needs to get done. My house still needs to get clean. My kids still need to get fed. It's not like I can just go to the spa for the day and life is perfect. And this is kind of what my rock bottom taught me, is that it's not about changing your external circumstances so much as it is about shifting that internal gear. So the gear shift between your sympathetic fight or flight and parasympathetic rest and digest is the longest nerve in the body that most people have never heard of. It's your vagus nerve, cranial nerve number 10. Super quick anatomy lesson, starts at the very back of the head, splits and winds around both sides. And it is most accessible if you feel behind your earlobe. You can feel that bone. That is your mastoid bone. That is where it is the most accessible to the surface and the thickest. And what's interesting is it's your gear shift. So, because anywhere that it kind of winds through the body, like the heart, this is heart rate variability, the lungs, this is diaphragmatic breathing, yoga breathing, digestion, gallbladder, this is coffee enema, gagging yourself on your face, laughing. Anywhere that it kind of winds through the body, you can stimulate it to help shift gears into parasympathetic. For years in practice, I was telling people like, splash freezing water on your face, gag yourself. Compliance was like 0. Right. And then in 2012, right around the time I was launching my company, there was a New York neuroscientist by the name of Kevin Tracy who started doing surgical implants, pacemaker-like devices in that exact spot behind the earlobe on the mastoid bone to stimulate the vagus nerve. And the FDA actually approved this technique for epilepsy, depression, and migraines. So what I quickly realized with using oils is that you can combine stimulatory oils. I like clove and lime with fractionated coconut oil. People don't realize that carrier oils, some are thin, some are thick. So some can kind of make the oils permeate your skin more quickly. So it's like an acupuncture needle. Oils can be used for acupuncture. So basically, using this stimulatory blend right behind your earlobe on your mastoid bone is your gear shift. It drops you into parasympathetic. It helps lower your heart rate variability. It helps you feel more safe, more centered, more resilient. It downregulates kind of the cortisol output. So this is something that is, we talked about Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. It's not that the wizard has great power. It's that the power lied in Dorothy. The power to kind of shift gears in your body and your nervous system lies in you. All you need to do is stimulate your vagus nerve. I think it's easiest to do it with oils. You literally flip the bottle, put one little drop behind your ear. And it's almost like for anyone that gets really ravenous and hungry, like the minute you start eating, you feel better.
Yeah.
The minute you put the oil on, you're like, oh, I feel better.
Wow, that is so interesting. So I'm wondering, just now you've got me so curious. So throughout the course of your day, are there just different things, like you're preparing for a podcast? Are there certain things that then you put on?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So you're just kind of back there, kind of adjusting what you need to do.
I mean, as you may relate to, like I could be a poster child for anxiety. And so I know if something makes me feel better, like I'll give you an example. I'm prone to anxiety attacks, panic attacks. They used to hit me in the supermarket checkout line. It would be so weird. And
Yes.
I'd
You're
have
like,
to
why here? Why?
I know. And you'd feel like your heart is exploding and suddenly you feel really claustrophobic and hot.
Yes.
So here's actually if people hear nothing else from this podcast,
Ooh.
remember this tip.
Okay.
When you're having an anxiety attack, there are different regions of your brain that do different things. In fact, there's a whole branch of chiropractic called functional neurology, where they're looking at how to balance different hemispheres of the brain. So panic attacks is overactivation of your right frontal lobe, so your right forehead. So the way you kind of calm and balance that is do something to stimulate your left frontal lobe, left forehead. The nose conveniently goes directly to the forehead. So all you need to do is take your right thumb, plug your right nostril, and smell anything. Any oil you have. If you want to peel a citrus fruit, oils live in the peels of the fruit. Smell a tangerine. And within 3 to 7 breaths, you'll have stimulated your left forehead, balanced the 2 hemispheres, and you'll feel better.
Wow.
And the more you do it, everything's additive and cumulative,
Sure.
the less likely you are to have panic attacks going forward.
Oh my God. Well, we'll make sure to highlight that suggestion. So thank you. And thanks for prefacing that. Yes, people, if you get nothing else out of this conversation, I think that is pretty interesting. And just kind of one of the things we're really looking to do with Sleep as a Skill is provide as many tools in our toolkit. Many of us have come to this place around our sleep and improving our sleep. And when it was at its worst, we just may have felt powerless or that we didn't have a lot of actions to take. And so thank you, number one, just providing that immediate kind of action. And then it can become a practice and become a kind of a calming ritual. So that's really amazing. And then beyond that, so one, you mentioned that your book kind of goes into some of these areas. We're talking about the root causes, sleep, adrenal support. Maybe you could share more about, normally I talk about the books at the end, but now I'm curious, is that something that you get into a lot? And do you focus specifically on sleep and kind of parasympathetic response? And then I would also say hormone balance. I know you mentioned that on there too, is certainly something that a lot of us women are certainly being mindful of as we're planning out. So say if we're of menstruating age, then different parts of our cycle and planning that appropriately for our sleep and having a bit of a awareness around how to regulate that. So, multiple different root causes. So I'm assuming in this book, in your new book, then you're going deeper into that. So maybe you could just share a little bit about that too.
Exactly. Yeah. I identify 5 steps, 5 kind of imbalances that when you put into balance, you get better. I would say sleep is my top priority. If you're not sleeping, it's incredibly hard to heal. People that have sugar cravings or energy dips, all of that gets resolved when you start sleeping. So I have an entire section dedicated to sleep. And I kind of subdivide it into, I think there are really 4 things that could be going on with sleep.
Sure.
The first is if you're insomniac, if it's hard to fall asleep. And I'll get more into this in more detail, but that's kind of when cortisol levels are high and they throw off melatonin. And then the second factor is if you're waking up in the middle of the night, but there are different reasons that you might be waking up. For example, if you wake up around 1 a.m. and you're wide awake, that is a blood sugar issue, nocturnal hypoglycemia. Your blood sugar dips too low. Your adrenals release cortisol or adrenaline as energy. And then your pancreas needs support bringing the sugar into the cells and out of the blood. If you wake up at 3 a.m. and you're kind of groggy, that's usually when your liver and gallbladder are working at the highest capacity. And so anything you can do, there are oils to support those organs and things that you can do before bed to help you not wake up, or if you wake up, go right back to sleep. And then the third thing is hormonal, as you mentioned, and there's certain oils that can help balance that. But kind of looping back to the biggest issue for a lot of people is falling asleep. Their body is exhausted. They can't wait to hit the mat, and yet their brain won't turn off.
Relatable. Yep.
Yeah. And so that, your stress hormone cortisol works kind of in tandem with your sleep hormone melatonin. It's a little bit like a teeter-totter. When cortisol is high, melatonin is low, and vice versa. So what you really want to do is help the pineal gland to release melatonin. Now, we talked a little bit about how, the blood-brain barrier can be hard to pass. And that's one reason some melatonin supplements don't work as well as others. The liquid, the sublingual that you squirt in your mouth, that can actually go through an easier pathway to get to the brain and start to turn things on. The other thing that's really interesting, your pineal gland, where it's located in the brain, it's not really protected by the blood-brain barrier. So it's really vulnerable to environmental toxins like specifically fluoride that can be in the water, because it can start to do something calcifying it, which makes it harder to release melatonin. Glyphosate, the herbicide in Roundup Ready, and aluminum can also compromise pineal gland function. And those three factors, along with EMFs, can kind of work like a perfect storm. So it just makes it harder for your pineal gland to really show up and release melatonin. But what's incredibly cool about plants, you know, you always use plants when you're doing detox, oils, they can help you to detoxify those metals. And it's almost like, you know, your phone glitches. Well, you just reboot it and it's fine. It's a way to kind of reboot your pineal gland so that it shows up as its best healthy functioning self. So that's what I really love about oils, that you can actually, you know, topically apply them. Like, honestly, the point, you know, the skin above where your ears connect with your head, that's a great point. I was originally putting it kind of on the face, but people don't really like oils on the face when they're sleeping. It just gets gross. So top of the head, back of the head. But it's just, it's another technique, you know, and I'll be honest, sometimes I use it with melatonin. I have an Aura ring. I love blue glasses. I see it as like, when people say like, okay, I think I want to lose weight. I'm either going to like diet or exercise. And I'm like, why don't you do both? You know, like the more things you layer on, the easier it is to kind of hit your goal.
Oh, wow. Very cool. And then, of course, for the timely topic, as far as immune support, based on what so many people are looking to improve, then that sounds like that's an area that you address as well.
Yeah. And that's one thing. It's funny because I think everyone has their own preconceived notion about essential oils, but most people on some level are like, oh yeah, they're antibacterial, antimicrobial, all of these things. And what I really try to do is give you, I have found, you know, as a busy mom and, you know, just 80-20 ruling my way through life, there are certain things that feel easy that I'll actually do. And then there are certain things that feel completely overwhelming that even though I kind of recognize like that seems like a good idea, it's just not going to happen. So what I really tried to do in this book is distill it down to like, these are, you know, the 5 things that matter. Like when I hit another rock bottom, someone said, all you need to do is sleep, eat, and move. And I was like, I can manage that.
Yes.
You know,
yes, it's actually a great book too. Yes. Yes, it's some version. I think it's just Sleep, Eat, Move, I want to say. And that's the title. And you're right. Like that just kind of cuts at the heart of a lot of our concerns if we can get those balanced. So absolutely.
Yeah. So in the book, I try to kind of explain why oils work for the immune system. And then I just give you, you know, I have my own blends for people that are not do-it-yourselfers. But then if people already have their oil company that they love, I give you my recipes. I just want to make it as easy as possible, you know, and there's common blend that everyone kind of knows. So I share our version of the recipe. It's called Thieves.
Oh,
you know, it's actually timely because during the bubonic plague, there were thieves that were stealing the gold teeth out of dead people's mouths. You know, and if you think about how we're all masked and like, can you imagine?
Can you imagine?
I'm going to crawl around in your mouth. Like, but they never got sick. So when they finally were captured, the authorities were like, what is it that you've been doing so that you don't, you know, catch the plague and die? And it was this combination of oils that they put in their mask. I actually like to put blue tansy is my favorite, but I put oil sometimes because I don't know. I just like to breathe in something that smells better than cloth.
Oh my God. I love that story. I had forgotten all about the origin story of that. And actually, and this was years back when I had heard about that, and I didn't think of how perfect that is for right now, for what we're going through as a on the globe.
Yeah, right.
Wild.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So you piqued my interest around so many things. So one thing that we started to add on at the end of these podcasts, because, you know, for people that often are coming on the podcast, they have such vested interest in health and well-being, and certainly in the area of sleep. So then there's a lot of curiosity. And okay, well, what is that person doing? So we do have 3 questions that we've started to ask for just like kind of your own personal routine. I feel like it would be perfect for what you do. So the first one is just, what is your personal nightly sleep routine? What does that look like so that we can kind of learn from you?
Yeah, I always use my circadian rhythm oil before bed. And then I always take, we didn't really talk about detoxification, but I take these things called binders. Basically, the garbage is supposed to go from your cell to your lymph to your blood to your liver to your gallbladder to your gut to the toilet. Yes. Often in the gut, it gets recirculated. So things like binders, charcoal, chlorella, algae, they just like magnets kind of grab the toxins and pull it out so that it doesn't get recycled and have to be processed again. So that's a really critical component. And then if it's been kind of an edgy day, I like Epsom salt baths. My favorite recipe is 2 cups of Epsom salt, 1 cup of baking soda, which alkalizes you. And then what I do is I use my bathtub as a mixing bowl. I put 3 drops of lavender in the tub and then mix it into the salt because then it won't float on the top of the tub.
Oh, smart. Oh my goodness. I'm going to start doing these things. My boyfriend or now fiance always calls me some sort of like, oh, thank you. Yeah, it's pretty new. So I keep forgetting to say it right. But yeah, he'll often call me. He's like, if we were back in, olden days, you would have been creating some concoctions like the witch's brew of, the tribe or what have you. And now certainly if I start doing that, that will be a very funny talking point in the evening. So I think I'm going to start bringing that in and much more of the kind of a mix. I like that concept of the mixing that can happen in there because often I'll do the Epsom salt, a little bit of oils occasionally, but I would like to start bringing in more of that baking soda. That's a great one. And then really mixing that in, very wise. Okay. So you'll bring that in almost medicinally when you've been dealing with some, just, quite a day to properly unwind. Okay.
Yeah. And, it's nice too, because, your skin is your largest organ. And heat kind of opens the vascular system. And there's something about the Epsom salt, which is magnesium, and the oils. Like I know lavender is always mentioned as a sleep oil. It doesn't always work. It's very hit or miss with people. Yes. But when you incorporate it into a bath, it seems to be much more effective that way.
Well, I'm glad you said that too, because I can be so sensitive with oils. And so sometimes I just have tended to, if they're very strong, then it'll be like a headache type response. So I appreciate you saying that because that is one thing I've noticed that in the bath, that seems to be a bit of a different experience. So very cool.
Yeah, because it's coming in through a different channel. And the headache is actually a really good point. So here's what's happening with the headache.
Yeah, please.
Kind of shift your body into balance, into that safe space where it's like, oh, it's okay to mobilize my toxins, right? But one of the challenges is it's like yelling fire in a movie theater without opening the exit doors. If your drainage pathways, meaning like your ability to kind of have your toxins leave your body, are congested, then they recirculate and they feel like a headache. So the biggest bottleneck in the body is the neck. And it's because there's a lot going on there. There's like your bone, your nerves, your blood vessel, your muscle, and your vagus nerve and your lymph, and they all congest. So oils, like I give the exact recipe, but it's a lot of mints. That can really, there's all this research where they took sonograms of the neck and saw how, when the lymph was congested, it's a little bit being like in the middle seat of an airplane next to 2 linebackers. Like you're not getting that armrest. Yes. Nothing's going to leave because there's just so much congestion. Yeah. So the more you can ensure that opens up, castor oil is a good one to use too. And then the lymph doesn't drain evenly. 75% drains on the left side. So your left clavicle is another kind of bottleneck point. So you don't even need oil, just kind of massaging that. So you're allowing your body to relax and you're also making sure that all the exit doors are open so the garbage can go out.
I appreciate you explaining that part too, because the only oil that I personally consistently use all the time and won't travel without it, won't go anywhere without it, is peppermint, like a blend of kind of a peppermint blend for headaches. And it has been so important as far as, and I wouldn't say that's the only one, but it's the only one I'm using pretty much daily or regularly. And just the experience of that is so huge. And I know there's so many others that obviously I can tap into that I'm not. So I appreciate you sharing about that and kind of the breaking it down into the why, because I think it can help some of us, when you hear what's going on behind the scenes versus like, oh, well, this is a nice smell or what have you, it makes it so much more layered and nuanced. So I really appreciate that. Okay. So then in your nightly sleep routine, you kind of have these different things that you can pull from based on how your day went and what kind of state you're looking to step into in your evening to kind of unwind. Okay. And then that probably leads us into then what is on your proverbial nightstand or literal nightstand? What might we see there if we were to see your nightstand? And that can include gadgets, supplements, ambiance apps, any of those other things. But I would imagine probably some good oils too.
Yeah, lots of good oils, the circadian rhythm. I have a sleep blend that's really kind of general and relaxing. And then I have one for the pancreas. I was kind of talking about those blood sugar night wake ups.
Yes.
I like tuning forks. I have a tuning fork that I use on the vagus nerve. And sometimes there's this point that just feels really calming, or I do it over the heart. Seattle is 5G central. And I've actually found that tuning forks, it's this idea, like planes are all flying in the air, but they never crash because they fly at different levels. I think tuning forks can up level your vibrations so that it doesn't really matter what's going on outside.
Nice. I love that practice. And is that a regular kind of nighttime practice for you or just depends?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. My dog likes to too. My dog sleeps with me, so I do it on him. And then books I read to fall asleep.
Okay. Very nice. Awesome. And then what would you say was or has been your sleep kind of aha moment or biggest change to your sleep game?
I think it really came when I realized that melatonin supplements weren't actually getting to my brain. When I started playing with sublingual melatonin or oils or just things that didn't have to travel through the digestive tract. That was a very big aha for me.
That is a big one. Wow. Well, so many value kind of drops that you've shared. And I know we loosely kind of alluded to your book and some of the ways that you're kind of looking deeper on this topic. I was wondering if we could share a little bit more about you, how people can learn about you and kind of spotlight that book a little bit more that's coming out.
Yeah. And, I talked about the vagus nerve. I actually have a free bonus chapter
yes.
at boostthebrainbook.com /gift. It's 25 strategies to activate your vagus nerve. Some of them are as simple as trying to sleep on your right side, or using your tongue like a paintbrush to paint the roof of your mouth. There are lots of free, easy things that you can do to literally help shift gears so that you're calmer during the day and not kind of mainlining cortisol.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay. Well, we absolutely will include that in the show notes then. Okay. So I love that you include that because so many people will get to the end of the night and then they're laying there and then it's like, okay, what do I do? What do I do to kind of bring myself, to bring some peace or ease or calm? And so that's awesome. I'm going to want to check that out. And so that's a free offering. We'll include that in the show notes. And then tell us more too about all the different places that we can find you and the book and all that good stuff, dates, all those things.
The book is Essential Oils to Boost the Brain and Heal the Body. It's available everywhere on March 16th.
Nice.
Yeah. And if you have any questions about anything I mentioned, my company is Vibrant Blue, like the color, oils. And you can email us at info@vibrantblueoils. I'm on Facebook. We have a Facebook discussion group, Instagram, LinkedIn. You can find me pretty much everywhere. Not Twitter. I don't really tweet, but otherwise everywhere.
I don't tweet. I do it all. No tweeting.
I leave that to President Trump.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I'm very similar. So perfect. Well, I know I definitely recommend checking out your website. I was just, kind of perusing on there. Tons of resources there. Get that freebie. The book is coming out the day before my birthday, March 17th. So, that's my birthday. So March 16th will be the day of the book. Oh,
you're a Pisces. No wonder I like you.
Oh, okay. Look at us.
Scorpio. The water signs.
Yes, absolutely. Very cool. Well, I so appreciate you taking the time to be here to share all of your vast knowledge. I'm clear that we only tapped into a little bit of it. And I'm also sure that people will, after listening to this, want to learn more. So definitely check out all those different platforms that you are on. And just thank you again for doing what you're doing.
Oh my gosh, thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you. You've been listening to the Sleep is a Skill podcast, the #1 podcast for people who want to take their sleep skills to the next level. Every Monday, I send out something that I call Molly's Monday Obsessions, containing everything that I'm obsessing over in the world of sleep. Head on over to sleepisaskill.com to sign up.